The Forgotten People by Robert Menzies speech. Now, the last thing that I would want to do is to commence or take part in a false war of this kind. In a country like Australia, the class war must always be a false war. But if we are to talk of classes, then time has come to say something of the forgotten class, the middle class, those people who are constantly in danger of being ground between the upper and the middle milestone of the false war. The middle class who properly regarded represent the backbone of this country. We do not have classes here as in England, and therefore, the terms do not mean the same. So I must define what I mean when I use the expression, the middle class. Let me first define it by exclusion. I exclude at one end of the scale the rich and powerful, those who control great funds and enterprises, and are as a rule able to protect themselves, though it must be said that in a political sense they have as a rule shown neither comprehension nor competence. But I exclude them because in most material difficulties the rich can look after themselves. I exclude at the other end of the scale the mass of unskilled people, almost invariably well organized, and with their wages and conditions safeguarded by popular law. What I am excluding them from is my definition of the middle class. We can exclude them from problems of social progress, for one of the prime objects of modern social and political policy is to give them a proper measure of security and provide the conditions which will enable them to acquire skill and knowledge and individuality. These exclusions being made, I include the intervening range, the kind of people I myself represent in Parliament, salary earners, shopkeepers, skilled artisans, professional men and women, farmers, and so on. These are, in the political and economic sense, the middle class. They are for the most part unorganized and unself-conscious. They are envied by those whose benefits are largely obtained by taxing them. They are not rich enough to have individual power. They are taken for granted by each political party in turn. They are not sufficiently lacking in individualism to be organized for what in these days we call pressure politics, and yet, as I have said, they are backbone of the nation. The communist has always hated what he calls the bourgeois, because he says clearly the existence of one has kept British countries from revolution, while the septennial absence of one in feudal France at the end of the 18th century and in Tsarist Russia at the end of the last war made revolution easy and indeed inevitable. You may say to me, why bring this matter up at this stage when we are fighting a war, the result of which we are equally concerned? My answer is that I am bringing it up because under the pressure of war we may, if we are not careful, if we are not as thoughtful as the times will permit us to be, inflict a fatal injury upon our own backbone. In point of political, industrial, and social theory and practice, there are great delays in time of war, but there are also great accelerations. We must watch each, remembering always that whether we know it or not, and whether we like it or not, the foundations of whatever new order is to come after the war are inevitably being laid down now. We cannot go wrong right up the piece of treaty and expect suddenly thereafter to go right. Now, what is the value of middle class? So defined and described. First, it has stake in the country. it has responsibility for home's material, home's human, and home's spiritual. I do not believe that the real life of this nation is to be found either in great luxury hotels and petty gossip of so-called fashionable suburb, or in the official dome of the organized masses. It is to be found in the homes of people who are nameless and unadvertised, and who, whatever their individual religious conviction or dogma, see in their children their greatest contribution to the immorality of their race. The home is the foundation of sanity and sobriety. It is the indispensable condition of continuity if health determines the health of society as a whole. I have mentioned home's material, home's human, and home's spiritual. Let me take them in order. What do I mean by home's material? The material home represents the concrete expression of the habits of frugality and saving, for a home of our own. Her advanced socialists may rave against private property even while he acquires it. But one of the best instincts in us is that which induces us to have one little piece of earth with a house and a garden, which is ours, to which we can withdraw, in which we can be among our friends, into which no stranger may come against our will. If you consider it, you will see that if, as in the old saying, the Englishman's home in his castle, it is this very fact that leads on the conclusion that he who seeks to violate the law by violating soil of England must be repelled and defeated. National patriotism, in the other words, inevitably springs from the instinct to defend and preserve our own home. Then we have homes human. A great house full of loneliness is not a home. Stone walls do not a prison make, nor do they make a house. They may equally make a stable or a piggery. Brick walls, dormer windows, and central heating need to make more than a hotel. My home is where my wife and children are. The instinct to be with them is the great instinct of civilized man. The instinct to give them a chance in life, to make them not learners but lifters, is a noble instinct. If Scotland has made a great contribution to the theory and practice of education, it is because of the tradition of Scottish homes. The Scottish plowman, walking behind his team, cons ways and means of making his son a farmer, and so he sent him to the village school. The Scottish farmer ponders upon the future of his son, and sees it most assured not by inheritance of money, but by the acquisition of that knowledge which will give him power. And so the sons of many Scottish farmers find their way to Edinburgh and a university. The great question is, how can I, my son, to help society? Not, as we have so frequently thought, how can I qualify society to help my son? If human homes are to fulfill their destiny, then we must have frugality and saving for education and progress. Finally, we have home spiritual. This is a notion which finds its simplest and most moving expression in the Cotter's Saturday Night of Burns. Human nature is at its greatest when it combines dependence upon God with independence of human. We offer no affront. On the contrary, we have nothing but the warmest human compassion toward those whom fate has compelled to live upon the bounty of the state. When you say that the greatest element in a strong people is a fair independence of spirit, this is the only real freedom, and it has its corollary, a brave acceptance of unclouded individual responsibility. The moment a man seeks moral and intellectual refuge in the emotions of a crowd, he ceases to be a human being and becomes a cipher. The home spiritual so understood is not produced by lassitude or by dependence. It is produced by self-sacrifice, frugality, and saving. In a war, as indeed at most times, we become the ready victim of praises. We speak glibly of many things without pausing to consider what they signify. We speak of financial power, forgetting that the financial power of 1942 is based upon the savings of generations which have preceded it. Speak of moral, as if it were quality induced from without, created by others for our benefit, when in truth there can be no national moral which is not based upon individual courage of men and women. We speak of manpower, as if it were a mere matter of arithmetic, as if it were made up of multiplication of men muscles without spirit. Second, the middle class, more than any other, provides the intelligent ambition which is the motive power of human progress. The idea entertained by many people that, in a well-constituted world, we shall all live on the state is the quintessence of madness. For what is the state but us? We collectively must provide what we individually receive. The great vice of democracy, a vice which is exacting a bitter retribution from it at this moment, is that for a generation we've been busy getting ourselves to the list of beneficiaries and removing ourselves from the list of contributors, as if somewhere there was somebody else's wealth and somebody else's effort on which we could thrive. To discourage ambition, to envy success, to have achieved superiority, to distrust independent thought, to sneer and to impute false motives to public service. These are the maladies of modern democracy, and of Australian democracy in particular. Yet ambition, effort, thinking, and readiness to serve are not only the design and objectives of self-government, but are the essential condition of its success. If this is not so, then we had better put back the clock and search for the benevolent autocracy once more. Where do we find these great elements most commonly? Among the defensive, comfortable rich, among the unthinking and unskilled mass, or among what I have called the middle class. Third, the middle class provides more than any other intellectual life, which mark us off from the beast, the life which finds room for the literature, for the arts, for science, for medicine, and for the law. Consider the case of literature. Could this survive as department of state? Are we to publish our poets according to their political color? Is the state to decree socialism because socialism gets a heavy vote in a key electorate? The truth is that no great book was ever written and no great picture ever painted by the clock or according to the civil service rules. These are the things done by man, not men. You cannot regiment them. The artist is he to live must have a buyer, the writer an audience. We find them a frugal people to whom the margin above bare living means a chance to reach out a little towards that heaven which is just beyond our grasp. It has always seemed to me, for example, that an artist is better helped by the man who sacrificed something to buy a picture he loves done by a rich pattern who follows the fashion. Fourth, the middle class maintains and fills their higher schools and universities, so feeds the lamp of learning. What are schools for? To train people for examination, to enable to comply with the law, or to produce developed men and women. Are the universities mere technical schools, or have they as one of their function and preservation of pure learning, bringing in its train not merely riches for the imagination but a comparative sense for the mind, and leading to what we need so badly, the recognition of values which are other than pecuniary. One of the great blots on our modern living is the cult of false values, a repeated application of the test of money, notoriety, applause, a world in which comedian or beautiful half-wit on the screen can be paid fabulous sums, whilst scientific researchers and discoverers can suffer neglect and starvation, is a world which needs to have its sense of values violently set right. Thrifty. Now, have we realized and recognized these things? Or is most of our policy designed or discourage or penalize thrift, to encourage dependence on the state, to bring about a dull equality on a fantastic idea that all men are equal in mind and needs, and deserts, to level down by taking the mountains out of the landscape, to weigh men according to their political organizations and power, as votes and not as human beings? These are formidable questions, and we can escape from answering them if there is really to be a new order for the world. I have been actively engaged in politics for 14 years in the state of Victoria and in the Commonwealth of Australia. In that period, I cannot readily recall many occasions upon which any policy was pursued which was designed to help the thrifty, to encourage independence, to recognize the divine and valuable variations of men's minds. On the contrary, there have been many instances to which the votes of thriftless have been used to defeat the thrifty. On occasions of emergency, as in the Depression and during the present war, we have hastened to make it clear that provision made by man for his own retirement and old age is not half as sacrosanct as the provision the state would have made for him if he had never saved at all. We have talked of income from saving as if it possessed someone's creditable character. We have taxed it more and more heavily. We have spoken slightly of the earning of interest at the very moment when we have advocated new pensions and social sins. I have myself heard a minister of power and influence declare that no deprivation is suffered by a man if he still has the means to fill his stomach, clothe his body, and keep a roof over his head. And yet the truth is, as have endeavored to show, the frugal people who strive for any obtain the margin above these materially necessary things are the whole foundation or a really active and developing national life. The case for the middle class is the case for a dynamic democracy as against the stagnant one. Stagnant waters are all level, and in the calm rises, active waters are never level. They toss at the tumble and the half crest and trots, but the scientists tell us that they purify themselves in 100 yards. That we are all human souls of like value cannot be denied. That each of us should have his chance is must be the great objective of political and social policy. But to say the industrious and intelligent son of self-sacrificing and saving and forward-looking parent has the same social deserts and even material needs as dull offspring of stupid and improvident parent is observed. If the motto is to be eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you will die, and if chances you don't die, the state you will look after you. But if you don't eat, drink, and be merry and save, we shall take your savings from you. Then the whole business of life will become foundationless. Are you looking forward to a breed man after the war who will become boneless wonder? Learners grow flabby, lifters become muscles. Men without ambition readily become slaves. Indeed, there is much more in slavery in Australia than the most people imagine. How many hundreds of thousands of us are slaves to greed, to fear, to newspaper, to public opinion, represented by the accumulated views of our neighbors. Landless, men smell the vapors of the street cornered. Landed men smell the brown earth, the plant their feet upon it, and know it that is good. To all this many of my friends will retort, "Ah, that's all very well, but when this war is over, the levelers will have won the day." My answer is that, on the contrary, men will come out of this war as gloriously unequal in many things as when they entered it. Much wealth will have been destroyed, inherited riches will be suspect, a fellowship of suffering, if we really experience it, will have opened many hearts and perhaps closed many mouths. Many great edifices will have fallen, and we shall be able to study foundation as never before, because war will have exposed them. But I do not believe that we shall come out in the overlordship of an all-powerful state. On his benevolence we shall live, spineless and effortless. A state which will dole out bread and ideas with neatly regulated accuracy, where we shall all have our dividend without subscribing our capital, where the government that almost deity will nurse us, and rear us, and maintain us, and pension us, and bury us, where we shall all be civil servants, and all presumably, since we are equal, head of departments. If the world is to be a world of men, we must be not pallid and bloodless ghosts, but a community of people whose motto shall be to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. Individual enterprise must drive us forward. That does not mean we are to return the old and selfish notions of laissez-faire. The function of the state will be much more than merely keeping the ring with it, which the competitors will fight. Our social-industrial laws will be increased. There will be more law, not less, more control, not less. But what really happened to us will depend on how many people we have, who are of the great and sober and dynamic middle class, the strivers, the planners, the ambitious ones. We shall destroy them at our peril.